So I love Yahoo, by the way. I used to work at Yahoo. Worked with Isaac there, Dave Glass, and did the pattern library there, worked with the YUI team, and so I'm really excited to see what's happening with the Cocktails project. So that just really gets me jazzed. And I was excited some of the other speakers came before me because I'm on the same journey. I went to probably the worst place on the planet for front-end development, or even development, is PayPal, right? And when I was at Netflix before I came to PayPal, and the very last place that I imagined myself working was PayPal. Wasn't even on my list, because I really hated the experience. I hated so much I hated about PayPal. So why did I go, right? I'm sadistic, right? No, I just thought that it would be an incredible chance to turn an organization around if they were open to it. And I'm going to talk about the journey of basically this monster of Node.js, being released into PayPal and how it's kind of changing the whole ecosystem, and we're working its way out. To back up though a little bit, at Netflix, typical release in 2010, we released the PS3. We had ported WebKit over to PS3, and this allowed us to actually launch 4 different experiences, in essence 16 different test cells. And we had an idea of what we thought would win based on usability testing and sort of things like that. I was actually tasked, along with Rochelle, who led design at the time, to pick the winner, because we thought we could only do one. We ended up muscling up the development resources. We launched all 16 different variations, and the one that I picked and Rochelle picked did not win. It did not do as well with users, so it humbled us by the data. So I was really used to, at Netflix, a very strong build, measure, learn cycle, and that the UI layer really is an experimentation layer. And that kind of crack, if you will, that crack cocaine of being able to change things really quickly was inside me. And when I was at Netflix, I really had an epiphany that we were throwing away probably 95% of our code in the course of a year in our test cells, which meant that we were really designing more for throwawayability and volatility than we were for actually any kind of long-term maintainability, which you still need it, of course. I'm not trying to say you don't. And we were engineering for learning. When I came to PayPal, though, in 2011, the latter part of it, there was a ton of the not invented here mindset, totally risk-averse, culture of what I call a long shelf life, where literally it took forever to get a product up and out the door, and it took forever and ever to take it down. In fact, this is one of our old sites. Thankfully, this is no longer there. I just love that blue parallelogram-y thing. Yeehaw! Anyway, if you wanted to change that paragraph, guess what? Line up. 6 weeks later, it'll be changed. Those words can be changed in 6 weeks. Thank you very much. 6 weeks! Do you know now why Stripe and Square came along? Yeah, we could not move. All the technology was tangled up in a lot of old, crufty stuff, and a lot of mindsets, like I talked about before, really were, the very opposite of rapid experimentation and the very opposite of build, measure, learn. So the existing stack, there's been a theme today about bashing on Java. Let me bash on Java a little bit too, because I started in Java development about 1996. And I built 4 different JSP frameworks over a period of time. So I think I've earned the stripes to bash Java as much as I want to. But they had really taken it to a new level. They decided, actually before the JSP stuff, they decided that you didn't really actually write HTML or CSS in JavaScript. You wrote it in Java. You wrote the CSS in Java. You wrote the JavaScript in Java. You wrote the HTML in Java. It wasn't even as good as GWT. And I put quotes around good there, right? And if you wanted to do Ajax, why do it with 2 lines or 1 line in jQuery when you can do it with a whole bunch in the server? You can subclass a Java controller. That's just freaking awesome, right? And that came from the Wicket heritage. Ben was talking about Wicket, and that's why I was groaning over there. You heard me groaning over and over because Wicket was the heritage. They just took Wicket and they bastardized it and made their own version of it. Couldn't even take the open source version of it. They had to change it. So night and day, right? And so fortunately what happened is I came in, I started looking at new technology, I started bringing in new engineers. Some folks from Yahoo joined me, some folks from Netflix joined me. And we started fleshing out from a JavaScript perspective what we could do different. And the first thing we started attacking really was the UI layer. And we picked something called Dust.js, which is a JavaScript templating language. And I'll talk a little bit about when we did that. But we also, when David Marcus became president, we gave Yahoo a big gift, by the way. We gave him Scott Thompson. They didn't see it as a gift. It was a gift from us. It was a Trojan horse. I don't know what it was, but we were glad Scott went along. because Scott had dialed the knob to risk and no love for experience. It was all about locking accounts and freezing accounts. So when David took over, who'd been a perennial he'd always serial startup person, he said, I want to kick off a project, a small team, got me involved, and I handpicked a few folks, and we started reinventing checkout. Now, checkout, you have to know, is 75% of revenue, about $3.5 billion, $4 billion worth of revenue, so not a backwater project. And we just immediately said, okay, David really wanted us to launch in 6 weeks, which really wasn't doable because there were some features he wanted that none of our subsystems actually had. But we said, okay, if we're going to do it, we're going to have to do it in Node. So in 3 days, we had a flow up and go and talking to APIs, and we had his vision. He'd actually created a balsamic mock-up of what he kind of wanted to do with checkout. And we put these new concepts together, and we had it working within 3 days, happy path. And he was pretty excited and blown away by that because that's not the way PayPal had been operating. And so then we started a cycle with a project I called Hermes, which is the god of mobility, mobile, the god of agility, lean, and the god of commerce, doing checkout, right? And what we did was we said, okay, and to get in a room, we're going to work together. Design's not going to use Photoshop except for the production assets. They're not going to use prototyping tools. They're going to sketch on the board. And Eric and Jeff, you see here, and myself a little bit, mostly Eric and Jeff though, we'll just code this thing on the fly. So as we sketch, we'll write it and do it in Node, do it with Dust, and that's what we did. And we actually had situations where our designer was like, okay, now should I go put this like in OmniGraffle? And Jeff just turns his laptop around and says, no, just try it. It's cool, right? We went to the concept of a living spec. So going from whiteboard to code, almost instantly, and code to our usability test every week, and get our learnings back, and then start again. Started a really vicious cycle of goodness, where we're getting real customer feedback and getting that every week. We started for a period of 8 weeks. While the Java team spun up this Sparta framework, they called it, based on Spring, it took about 8 weeks for the developers to get that going. We'd already written, a lot of the application in Node, right? So Node was kind of a cornerstone for that. And what we did was we basically, I'll go through several steps we went through. And basically what you take away this, we had this enormous amount of legacy, and I had to figure out kind of a chess game on how to refactor and utilize what's there, kind of like what the folks at Yahoo have done and folks at Walmart have done, and not wasting that to actually take advantage of it. So, we did the things, of course, express and connect and require and all the typical things, nothing really rock science there. Taking our UI bits and really setting them free. We used Bootstrap, because that was just great to get that we could, in like a half a day, we had the new style of PayPal that we were going towards, the new look and feel. We had that up and going in Bootstrap, and we could just, code in a hurry and be able to go and sketch the code, which was really great. And the other thing was using JavaScript templating. I can't say enough about this. When I took a period of time off from Netflix, and before I went back to Netflix, and I was working with folks like Sam Pilara and Luke Grabluski on BagCheck and a few other startups, and I saw the speed of just things like JavaScript templating, because at that time Sam was writing the Mustache Java version of it, and I got really exposed to that. I went back to Netflix and actually brought Mustache into Netflix. But I really saw this benefit of being able to run on the server or the client. But the other thing was the ability to run it anywhere, even on other stacks, which was really key. And this fourth step was really, really key, because we couldn't get Node production ready in just a few months. There was going to be a lot of work to have to do that. And what I mean by production ready is talking to all of our systems, utilizing everything we have within PayPal. And so we just did a quick hack fix, where we took Java, this Java framework on Spring, and we went to use a different view resolver, create a new view resolver. So instead of using JSP, we used Dust. So now we could take the actual UI bits as we're doing our prototyping, having this living spec, no longer having a big PRD document, what I like to call predictive documentation, no longer having this big documentation, but having prototype. Those same UI bits could just be copied right over onto the Java stack and actually run on it. So it was like our first little gambit to be able to reuse and use the stack. We've actually have another project we did called DeLorean, which is like Back to the Future, because we have a whole bunch of stuff still on the C++ stack. So what we've done is inserted V8 into the C++ stack. So instead of having render XPT, which is our XML, XSLT, lovely framework that a lot of the stuff still runs on, thank you very much, we now can actually just detect Dust templates. You just drop them in the same directories. If it sees them there, it'll preference them over the XSL and XML files, and we can now, as we are working on fixes on the old stack, we can just run them in Dust. So that, from the UI perspective, that gives us, JavaScript gives us a way to run across all three of those stacks, Java, Node, and C++. And then the fifth step was, of course, we just chose to build totally on open source. At PayPal, they had taken things like Java Spring, and they had bastardized them enough that it took a 20-day training class to learn how to use their version of Spring, which is just really crazy. Our situation was we did this bootstrapping. We hired some folks right off the street, and in 3 hours they had their first check-ins because they could just grok and understand the code. And so these are all some of the things that we did. And we also built our own. We started building a framework on top of Express, a very light framework, not much on top of it. Something we call Web Core that allows for scaffolding and allows us to have a very clean, seamless environment in development, production, and also hides all the complexity of PayPal. And you just feel like you're just doing a regular Node app. You don't feel like you're doing anything that's a PayPal app. And I just want to share a little GitHub love. When we were first kicking this off back last March, April of last year, we discovered that we actually had a GitHub internal license, enterprise license. Nobody had actually told us. We're like, oh my God, GitHub, oh, and so it was exactly the same day we started, we're at Node in, and we really just realized we had GitHub, and we're like, man, all the stars are aligning, the gods are happy with us, and because GitHub revolutionized the way we could decentralize all this centralized stuff that was going on. We had a platform team that owned all this stuff. Well, we just sort of went around them and started building all this goodness, and then we convinced them to use GitHub once we told them what GitHub was, because they actually literally didn't know what GitHub was, or Git, or any of that. We had actually brought Git in-house, but they had wrote a layer on top of Git to make it look like ClearCase. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. So then the next step was really bring Node to production. So in January, we kicked off this project called Kraken, and the idea was, if I could just release Node, as the production stack and in PayPal, make it the blessed stack, then all this goodness happens, because no longer do you have these Java engineers you throw stuff over to. You have JavaScript engineers from the app layer, from the service layer up through the UI. And so the same people can work on the same code and move up and down. You need a lot less people. An example is we had a team that was going to have 25 to 30 Java engineers building just a simple controller layer for our new wallet consumer app. And after about a month of a lot of arguing, I got them to cut it down to 5 Java engineers. And at the same time, we kicked off our Node in parallel, and we did it with one Node engineer, right? So pretty much a factor of 30 to 1. Now we have about 3 on there because we're pulling a lot more features in. But we had to cover monitoring, logging, security, our content stuff, analytics, authentication, of course, obviously template rendering, experimentation platform, our packaging, application framework deployment, session management. We have this customized mem cache thing called Mayfly, but you don't know you're doing that. You're just picking up the request object in Connect, and you just use the session object, and you're just using that, and you don't even know you're using Mayfly. We had folks who joined our team to building the Node framework, and they would fall in the trap of constantly wanting to, in Node, what you'll do is you'll actually create a Mayfly object, and you'll do blah, blah, blah. No. Just make it, it's a session. We don't care. Because you're in developer mode, you may not have Mayfly, you may be using, your file system. You might be using memcache, you might, whatever, so you don't care. And it was really a mind shift change for a lot of our Java enterprise engineers to get to this simple mindset. The other really large mindset that we had to change was they would come to us, they had worked for 5 years building this Java framework. They had an adoption team, and that adoption team didn't really work so well, so they had to have a second adoption team to help the other adoption team get the stuff adopted. Now, once we went to Dust and Node, it was like almost instantaneous. We had to have an anti-adoption team to slow people down, because we wanted to make sure that the right engineers were involved with it, that we're doing it correctly, and we also had a little chance to bake on a few real-world projects. So we really knew how we wanted to set things going. Basically with our web core stuff, it's really easy to create an app in a few minutes. We have a cool screencast internally and a walkthrough tutorial, and we have our engineering managers and engineers. We'll send them to it, and about 10 minutes later, half an hour later, they come back and they built their first app that goes through authentication, gets account details, and displays account details, full Node stack, and they go, oh my God, this is This is incredible because you have to take people through the experience. Once they go through the experience of it, they become believers and they become your evangelist. But they do have to go through an epiphany. This one job engineer was building he was going to building our kind of, it's sort of like Webflow in Spring, if you know what that is. It's basically an XML configured flow manager. Hate that. Obviously JSON based, but that we're doing. But he first had all these ideas he was going to do. We kept saying, think simpler, man. Just, embrace functional programming. So one day he comes, he's a Marine, he's got, ex-Marine, he's got all these tattoos. He comes up to me, big guy, he grabs me, he says, I had an epiphany. And I went, what, I'm hoping it's something good, And he goes, functional programming, where have I been? He's been locked in the Java mindset for so long. And we knew he was a great engineer. And he's totally made the transition. He's building our flow services. And now we're, moving, of course, to one stack to rule them all, where the Java stack goes away completely, the RhinoScript stuff goes away completely, and it's all on Node. In fact, all the new applications are being built on Node and on Dust. And, we've got the support of our president, our CTO, my VP of engineering, who I report to, and I actually run all the U engineering, all the front-end development. So I have about 140 engineers, so I have some ability to make things happen with those resources, which is really good. We've added, of course, our own NPM internal module, like everybody else is doing, registry, so that we can do whitelisting and such. We use Bower also internally for our common components. And the last step that we're going through is actually to release, some of these things to open source. So, our web core is built on Express. It's convention-based app building. It has an API also to it that you can configure the request lifecycle. So it's kind of easy with this other one called Brogan, which is Irish for boot, by the way, bootstrap. And it's an app middleware bootstrap capability that allows you just to inject any middleware into the request lifecycle. And what that does is basically, at PayPal, there's all these other modules you can pull in. You got logging, you got authentication, you got flow management, you got all these sort of things like that. We don't really want our developers to have to think too hard about it. So with something like Brogan, we can actually inject those things into it. When you give a flavor, it's almost like Yeoman's. You give a flavor for the kind of application you're building or the modules you need. It kind of stitches everything together for you. And since we're very convention-based, it drops in the right folders and things automatically happen. So that's something we're doing. Internationalization, of course, a big one for us. There, especially in the Dust world, we've got a way to handle the content resolution on the server side, which gives us ability to do it at scale because we have a lot of scale ourselves. We've been doing some performance testing because we're just starting to roll things out in live, so we don't have a lot of data yet, but we're seeing anywhere from a 30-to-1 to 100-to-1 improvement over the Java stack. So, that's just very preliminary. Yeah, I agree. So, I want to put a note about this because, really getting Node into a large company like PayPal, especially one that had been so stymied by its horrible technologies. What Walmart Labs did, what Ben and Dion did. In fact, I was actually, the week I was going to accept at PayPal, Ben and Dion were trying to become Walmart Labs. And they showed me what they were doing there, and I just, that was another thing that reinforced Node in my mind when I went to chose PayPal instead, was they had proxied their way out of hell, basically. I think Ben said it, but Aaron Hammer had come and given us a talk, and basically he said the best services they talked to was SOAP. And so they could do that. We've been more coming from the rapid prototyping and the experimentation and wanting to have a lot of app, development and changes, getting things out to customers really fast. And so by doing it as a prototyping framework to begin with, and coupling it with Lean UX, which basically changed the whole way we work, so we just put product design engineers together in the same area. We've actually restructured all the way our furniture is, our offices, everything around this whole concept. And this all came from that Hermes project. That Hermes project with Node and everything was a seminal thing that we invested, $15, $20 million in rebuilding our furniture stack. I mean, it's pretty enormous what the changes. But prove it out in the sandbox and then begin to scale it, and then of course do it with talent, because we recruited some really good, really top engineers that I knew in the company, and now we're able to attract a lot of other good engineers because, hey, why go to Facebook and do PHP? Come to PayPal and do Node, right? And it's like I'm looking for not like settlers. I'm looking for pioneers. You know, you got to really like a little bit of the friction to show the way. And so, you know, there's a certain kind of engineer that we get right now. Later, we'll hire a lot more settlers, but right now we're hiring pioneers that are willing to push through. So that's the story of what we're doing at PayPal. I'm really excited about it. I really want to thank you guys, you know, the Node community, because, you know, you create a platform that, you know, we could very much with confidence, you know, go to our, you know, my executives, my leaders, and I can put my neck on the line and, you know, and actually show and demonstrate what we can do with this. And without this community and the growing community, we wouldn't be able to do that. So I really appreciate that. And that's what I had to say. Oh, this was the this has been the regular checkout, this redirect ugly thing. So, you know, we have a lot of variations on it, but basically, you know, we did mobile first, you know, and we did it multi-device, and we got a lot of other experiences that are coming out the door. We're redoing all the merchant experiences, all our consumer wallet experiences, our checkout experiences. Everything's being redone. And all of it, again, is on Node and using JavaScript templating. So that's, I think, pretty cool. Thank you very much.